Hey everybody, Grapes here. Just wanted to let you know that our conversation about the MorningStar White situation is in this episode, and it comes right after our headlines and before our part 2, which is another edition of Salt Street Bets. However, we did record those original sections that were the headlines and Salt Street Bets a couple of days ago, which were before the news ended up breaking, so some of that information might be outdated. You might also notice that we published the full conversation about Morningstar that is in this episode on its own on our YouTube channel because we felt like it was an important conversation to be heard. So if you are coming from that, you can check the timestamps below so you can make sure you don't have to watch anything you've already watched. And that is about it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Salty Runback. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. We're back for episode number 39, and a lot has happened. We had our biggest week of the season in terms of games played in the NACL, and we eliminated half of our teams in the qualifiers. We went from 16 to 12, then 12 to 8, and now 8 to 4, with the semifinals and finals happening this weekend. It's a big week coming up, and we're here to talk all about it. My name is Grapes. I'm joined alongside Hawk. Hawk, how are you doing today?
Grapes, I'm doing great because we just came off one of the best weekends of games we probably will have in this level of play. It was just so much fun. So many great stuff happening back and forth. And now we get to talk about it.
Yeah, there's drama galore. There's really
some
fun
good memes.
Upsets that happen, some good memes, and I'm very excited to get into it. And I guess we could just jump right ahead. Before we do so, make sure to check out our YouTube channel for all of these uploads, as well as our new show Tier 3 tonight. We'll upload the VODs there, as well as all the content that goes alongside them. And I think we have some pretty good content pieces with some NACLQ players, so make sure to take a look at that. Those will be going out kind of throughout the week, and then Salty Runback every Thursday night alongside Tier 3 tonight. And we also have CLOL Central happening on Friday as well. Have we locked the teams yet, Hawk, or are we still confirming
we have
what's
locked
going on?
in the teams. We are streaming St. Clair against McMaster. St. Clair coming in, newcomers to East Conference. They're going up against a McMaster team that I think surprised a lot of people last year by making it to the top 16 in the CLOL Championship. So hopefully should be a fun one.
Yeah, we'll be there Friday night starting at 8 p.m. Just hop in a little bit early for our pre-show, or we'll have some extra content there before our series of the week. But that's all of our housekeeping. It's time to get underway with our first part of this episode, which, of course, are the headlines. We got 5 big stories to talk about here. The first of which is a new team at the top of the leaderboards in the Challengers League. Maryville University, a team that was ranked 8th in our power rankings by the community, and I think 10th by us, Hawk, coming into the season, are now 4-0 and are tied with FlyQuest for first place in the entire LCS Challengers League. If you had to pick one thing that has really been the difference maker here for Maryville this season, what has it been for you?
Now, I do just want to say, look, we were haters for sure. However, we didn't know when we power ranked Maryville 10th what the starting roster would be. I think if we knew it would have been this roster, we probably would have power ranked them a little higher. Grapes, I know we had conversations behind the scenes about questions of who their jungler would be, really meaning a lot for us. With that being said, though, Maryville, I think, has still surpassed expectations. I think at this point for them to be 4-0, they're actually completely tied with FlyQuest in the standings, not just, of course, in that 4-0 match score, but also in game score, being 8-2. Safe to say this team has been pretty damn good. 75% win rate in the NACL is not too, or 80% win rate in the NACL is not too shabby. And I mean, what has made them so good? It's got to be that mid jungle, right? Long time duo Yuji and Spyrax. They are looking damn good once again.
You could argue that they're, I think, looking better than they did last year. I think when they came onto the scene as a duo in 2022, they've really impressed, especially towards summer. Then in 2023, they had some periods of looking really solid and then some periods of looking just all right. It seemed like that team was more just like all 5 of the players kind of working together. But on this Maryville team, they seemed locked in like as that duo once again, and I think that's really helped this team that I don't think has gotten too much experience in terms of playing together before the start of this season. And so with that pre-built synergy combined with the other pre-built synergy, it doesn't look like they're making these roster changes super quickly. They seem like they are fully, um, locked in together as five, and that's been a big difference maker for them.
Yeah, they have really looked locked in. It's so great, seeing a player like Spyrax back in mid lane. Like, I'm so glad he's out of top lane. I think it almost made us forget how freaking good Spyrax is at the game watching him play top lane for a little while. Like, yeah, this Maryville team, they've really come together in an impressive way. And I think what's so impressive about them as well is, Graves, it doesn't look like they have an obviously exploitable weakness. Like, I know there were concerns about if Spyrax was going to be in the top lane, that could be a weakness. Scary Jerry and Zyko were one of the weaker bottom lanes in the Challengers League last year. They've stepped up big time. I think Scary Jerry in particular has made fewer of the same mistakes that really hindered their team last year, at least so far. And Maryville continues on their winning ways. Now, the question will remain, though, can Maryville actually convert this into a really high showing when the chips are down, right? Because this is a team that we've seen win a lot of games, but not a lot of championships over the last few years. And obviously, they've got to contend with FlyQuest Challengers, which is a head-to-head matchup I think a lot of people are going to be looking forward to, but just, food for thought.
Yeah, I want to touch back on that bot lane point because that actually was going to be my answer, because I think we knew Maryville with UG Spyrax were still going to be good, but they're maybe a middle of the pack team to going up there. I think the biggest difference has been how Scary Jerry and Zyko have basically won every matchup that they have been against so far down in the bottom lane. Going in the summer split, they seem to be a decent lane in the NACL compared to how well they were playing in qualifiers, where they were definitively the best bottom lane in that league. But this season, it seems like they have gone from being that kind of middle of the pack to maybe a little bit towards the bottom of the pack to being a very, very solid team, a very, very solid bot lane, I should say, that are winning a ton of these matchups. I mean, we had Jerry on Draven in that last matchup that they had against Mirage Alliance, and really took over a lot of that game. And it seems like no matter what champion he's on, he's helping his team win.
And I think something I've learned from both talking to Jerry and watching him play is that he's a player that really, like very much a vibes player, right? Someone that when Jerry's feeling confident, he's playing well. When Jerry is feeling uncertain or nervous, that's maybe when the play starts to go down a little bit. So I think it is really valuable for Maryville right now that Jerry is clearly feeling really good and really confident no matter who he's against. I think that is something that could really help elevate this Maryville team. And honestly, Graves, maybe this could just segue us into our second topic, because like you said, Maryville, a team that maybe we could have considered middle of the pack. And honestly, at this point, like, I would say they're pretty solidly top of the pack, but at the very least, this looks like one of the only teams that should be safe as the season progresses with this 4-0 scoreline.
Well, yeah, let's move right on to our next headline then. As the reason that we brought this one up is because we're about the halfway point of the season. It's week 4 out of 8. But also, we had our final team pick up their first win of the NACL, with Mirage Alliance finally getting a 2-1 victory over AOE. So they're still in last place, but now every team has a win, which means everyone is beating each other in some sort of capacity. So, Hawk, my question to you now is, with about half the season done, how many of these teams are safe from that relegation tournament, from that bottom 2, as the way the standings look right now?
Not many. Not many at all. 2, maybe 3 is the only answer. Just to read off the standings for people. At the top, of course, we just talked about it. We got FlyQuest and Maryville. They're the ones that are like probably pretty obviously safe. Starting 4-0, I mean, at worst you finish 4-5. They won't finish 4-5, but at worst you get that scoreline. They're probably safe. I don't think they have too much to worry about. I mean, Mirage Alliance, I think, has already lost 5 matches, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, they're 1-5 right now.
Yeah, so those teams definitely going to be safe from relegation. Then you have Supernova at 3-1, which feels like you could go either way. I think that one depends on how good you think Supernova is. They probably should be fine. After that, Cincinnati Fear is in 4th place at 2-1. Lit at 2-2, and then Wildcard at 2-3. Like, it gets really dicey really quickly when you hit that middle of the table standings. And I think specifically when you look at teams like Lit that people might have had being in that relegation tournament at the beginning. Yeah, they've started off pretty well, picking up some quality wins over Wildcard, Mirage. They've got 2 to their name. How many more are they going to be able to get? You start asking those questions and you realize that with some of our mid-table teams feeling a little unproven perhaps, and some of our lower teams just kind of looking like shit. Who's gonna be in relegation is a huge question.
Yeah, it seems pretty up in the air right now, especially for those teams even in the middle to bottom of the pack, because there are 4 teams right now, AoE, Disguise, TLC, and Mirage, who have only won 1 series. Now, of course, it looks different because each of them have lost a different number of series, AoE losing 2, Mirage having lost 5. But right now, I think I would say all 4 of them are still very much in the mix of getting relegated.
Yep.
And I would put that number at, I think I would put it at 3. I think FlyQuest, Maryville are locked basically just because of math, and I don't see a situation where more than 1 team or more than 2 teams, or like I don't see a world where the bottom 2 teams are 4 and 5 basically. Like the
I
9th
don't
place
either.
team
I
will
don't
be
either.
will have 3 or less losses, and I think I'll throw Supernova in there as well, just because they have like 2-0'd a lot of their series, I think, or they 2-0'd one of their series at least.
I think
And
Supernova's actually played a lot of game 3s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Sorry, they've gone to game 3 once actually. They've or something like that.
Something like that.
Either way, that's besides the point. I think Supernova are a good team, and they have 3 wins, and I think 3 wins should probably be the number. But even if it's not, I don't expect them to lose out the rest of the way.
I mean,
the
I
rest
think
of the teams.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't. The rest of the teams, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is hard to know. And just the point I was gonna make about Supernova is like, yeah, I mean, obviously math is math, and they're probably safe, but like Supernova to me does feel like they're playing at a level that feels safe. And I think that's
they're playing
the main
at a
thing.
3rd place level right now.
Yeah, aside from the math, and obviously a big part of it is just how many series some of these teams have played, but I do think a big part of the feeling for me is that Maryville, FlyQuest, and Supernova are not only at the top of the standings, but now basically being halfway through each of their seasons, they feel like the only teams that I could pretty definitively say, I'm like, okay, these guys, top of the table teams. Even teams like Fear, 2-1, they've looked pretty good. I'll give it to them. Fear have looked good. I just don't feel confident enough to say that they're a bona fide contender at this point.
And that's where the amount of matches being different across the board really plays a factor.
Yeah.
Because if our 4th place team was the same winning percentage as Cincinnati Fear, 67%, but had double the amount of games and was 4-2, I would put them in as safe right now. But it's just the fact that we haven't seen that level, that 2-1 level, through enough series right now, compared to a team like Mirage, who are 1-5, who have played double the amount of games as them, or double the amount of series as them. So I think right now it's early in the season for some, it's middle of the season for others, and I think that is why it is still hard to tell who exactly are going to make the promotion tournament.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see who's there. I mean, like, again, math not really falling in the favor of like Team Liquid right now. Obviously, Mirage is probably doomed. We've talked about this, right? But Team Liquid sitting at 1-4, they definitely need to start picking up wins. So maybe based on that, you could start to say that some other teams are safe. But again, not enough games having been played. And I really want to reinforce that the parity in this league feels like anyone can beat anyone, with the exception of these couple teams that feel like they're separating themselves.
And even then, there's still a lot of games left to be played, and
I
wouldn't be surprised. I would be very surprised, I should say, if any team, if either FlyQuest or Maryville ended undefeated. I think they will drop a series at some point. That'll be my take.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to disagree entirely. I would be surprised if neither of them ended undefeated, I think. I think anyone can beat anyone, but I think at this point, halfway through the season, having 2 undefeated teams, who is going to beat them? Because if I'm also not mistaken, I believe Supernova has already been defeated by Maryville. Am I wrong?
Yes. FlyQuest will have to play Supernova.
Oh, wait.
Maryville will have to play FlyQuest, obviously.
I am
Maryville...
wrong. Okay.
Ooh.
Oh, wait, no. Supernova lost 2-1 to Maryville in week 2.
Yeah.
So that's their one loss.
Yeah, I just think that there still are teams at the top. Like Supernova has to play Fly, and a team like Fear still has to play Maryville, and then of course they both have to play each other. I think that there are still, I think there are still a ton of games, and even teams that are towards the bottom right now, like AoE or TL, they still could have a chance, because I think the parity league is pretty high.
And
so
teams like AoE have had Well, actually, I was going to say they've had difficult strength of schedule. Maryville is hard, but they also are the only team that's lost to Marsh Lions. So,
A little bit of a stain in their record, but hopefully they'll be back for more. Let's move on to our next topic as we start to talk about the qualifiers. And speaking of parity, we got a couple of surprises in terms of teams that did not make it into our top 4. Hawk, we'll go day by day and talk about one series from each. Which was a more disappointing loss for you? Team Fish Taco getting knocked out before the round of 8 by CCG Esports, or BlackRock, the team that has looked dominant the entire way through, getting shut out in a 2-0 sweep to Lotus.
Yeah, and BlackRock looked really good throughout this tournament, right? 8-0 through their first 8 games, and then losing 0-2 to a Lotus team. Like, that is shocking. However, if you're asking me the question of most disappointing, without a shadow of the doubt, it's Team Fish Taco's loss. That team was predicted to be one of the favorites to win the whole thing, a shoo-in for the promotion tournament coming into the split, and they did not even make quarterfinals. And there have been situations in the past where teams have taken early exits because, like, oh, they had a bad day and they shit the bed, or like they played a good team in quarters, whatever. You know, it could be a native moment. I mean, honestly, even BlackRock, like, you could almost chalk that up to like Lotus had a good day and BlackRock had a bad day, right? Like, that stuff happens. Team Fish Taco looked terrible the entire tournament, and I'm going to say took a deserved early exit, and now they've got to regroup for OQ2. And we know that with the talent level on this team, they could totally just win the whole thing and make promotion anyway. But they've put themselves backs against the wall after a very, very disappointing first tournament.
Yeah, the series against BlackRock and then this last series against CCG specifically were very disappointing looks from Taco. I would say that they outperformed CCG in the first round at least, but then when you combine their 2 losses here with the fact that they went 3-2 in Swiss, the fact that both Taco and Winthrop went 3-2 now look very different, because you look at Taco as being kind of indicative of, you know, a pattern of, you know, continued struggles, where now you see Winthrop, oh, they just had a bad couple of games towards the end because they're now cleaning house on their way to top 4. So very different situations for them. And yeah, I think that Taco looked very, very shaky, especially in that last series. And it would even go as far to say that series was not even necessarily CCG playing well. I think CCG played better in some of the other series that they played. I think it was more Taco like fumbling, specifically in that game 3, where they had an 8,000 gold lead. They were at the enemy Nexus Towers, and they just decided to not reset for the Dragon Soul. And they just, that moment specifically shows me that there's a sign or a, you know, continued case of like decision making that is not working well with this team. And I think is not the strength of the players, it's that has to change going into the second tournament.
And to reinforce the point as well, you talk about the comparison with Winthrop and Team Fish Taco. Like, here's the thing. CCG is a good team. And, you know, losing to them for a lot of teams would not be bad. But, like, when you're expected... Like, Team Fish Taco should beat this team 10 days of the week, you know? There's not even 10 days of the week. That's how badly they should beat them. 10 out of 10 times, you know? And so the fact that they did drop that, and it looks bad, and, you know, you might think, oh, CCG, actually pretty good. Again, good team, but not a bona fide contender. Winthrop wiped the floor with them in the next round. I mean, immediately following, just destroyed them. And I think that even further reinforces that comparison. For Winthrop, it was an off weekend in the open qualifier. TFT, really, I don't know what's going on, but it was not a good look.
Yeah, because we've seen really solid individual moments from basically every one of their players. Levitated specifically played very well in those first couple of weeks, and then things kind of fell apart. I think a little bit, like where they would struggle in some of these really hard stomp lanes against CCG. I think Sudsy had a very solid tournament. The top side is maybe where you throw some question marks. Hoarder didn't look great. Limo, I think, is that vocal shot caller and that leader, and I think you could attribute some of those macro decisions to him as a whole. And so that is where I'm hoping that Team Fish Taco is able to turn things around and just get that mental back, because when this team is rolling, they're fun. They have a lot of really fun personalities, and it's better for the qualifier scene as a whole. So we talk about BlackRock a little bit as well, because I do think that that is an interesting storyline. I will say that I do think I'm disappointed because I thought that they were going to be very good given their last couple of weeks and how badly they destroyed Taco. However, now that Team Fish Taco lost, maybe maybe things look a little bit different in that regard. And I think Lotus actually played really well. I want to get I guess this is my chance to hype up Lotus in that quarterfinal matchup that they had against BlackRock because Mixture and Psycho or Forsen, I think they're right now playing like a top 3 or 4, if not higher, bottom lane in the entire tournament.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I think that they deservedly have earned their team this spot here, whether it was the Hue smolder moment at the end of game 1 that took things from an even game state immediately into a Lotus game 1 win, or the ADTF pick that absolutely took over with 17 kills dropped by Forsen to clinch that victory. Everyone else played all right, but that bottom lane specifically is the reason that Lotus is in top 4.
Yeah, no, I love that you take the time to hype up Lotus because, and I think that's part of the reason, like, Lotus looks like a great team and they deserve their roses. Also for BlackRock, we're talking about the pre-tournament expectations. TFT was supposed to be a literal contender. For BlackRock, losing in quarterfinals is actually like exactly what we expected,
Yeah.
I mean, the roller coaster of emotions getting there, yeah, they went from, okay, probably a quarterfinal team to, holy shit, they could win the whole thing to, okay, I guess a quarterfinal team. But
I guess it's from like like you are placing your expectations from and how disappointing they were. Because if it's from like the start of the split, it's definitely Taco. If it's from going into these last couple of days of games, maybe it is BlackRock because we weren't expecting TFT to have a one-sided series against CCG.
And here's what I'll say too, for BlackRock as well, like the series was very one-sided, but I don't actually think BlackRock played that bad. Like, it sounds weird. They got blasted, but again, I think Lotus just played really nicely. I mean, first off, I think Robbie Bob and Kitsuo generally outperformed their opposite numbers. Robbie Bob destroyed Aljun in laning phase both games, which is maybe my only concern with Lotus going forward, by the way. I do think the team has played really well, but Aljun has been a little weaker in the laning phase, and we know how good Robbie is in that same vein. But, and then, game 1, completely even until a single bad fight just ends the game. And then in game 2, they got boomed by the ADTF pick. And, Nori B kind of got shit on a little bit. It happens, And it's like, yeah, it sucks. And it looks bad on the scoreline. And it's like, okay, guys, we got destroyed. But at the same time, I wasn't sitting there thinking, like, what the fuck is BlackRock doing? I've had a lot more of those series with some other teams in this tournament. So, it could have been worse, and I think maybe that alleviates some disappointment for me as well, where it's like, wow, okay, a great Lotus team took them down. BlackRock, they'll be back next time. I think, I still would feel pretty good about this team heading into OQ2.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and we can talk about how likely we think they are in terms of making it in our part 2, which we can get into a little bit later. But we still have 2 headlines to go, so let's get to it as we head into our top 4. Another team named MorningStar White continuing to impress. They had a 2-0 victory over Aporia, featuring a ton of former NACL prospects, as well as a couple of new faces that have looked really solid as well. They are now in the top 4. They play against Lotus, which is the surprise team that everyone was not necessarily expecting to get here over BlackRock, and have a very good shot at making it all the way to the promotion tournament and beyond. Right now, Hawk, out of the 4 teams, it's Lotus and MorningStar, and then on the other side, it's Ole Miss and Winthrop. Is MorningStar White actually the favorite to win this whole thing?
It's either them or Winthrop. No one else. I mean, it would be an upset if either Lotus or Ole Miss won the tournament. And I just want to say as well, if MorningStar White does win the whole thing, this might be the biggest upset in qualifier history, even bigger than BlackRock Esports last year. I mean, what a story it would be for this team. And I guess you're asking me to put my money where my mouth is between MorningStar and Winthrop, whether it's the pre-tournament favorites or Morningstar. You know what? Yeah, I think Morningstar's the favorite. I think this team, they're scrappy. They have an insane individual talent level. We've talked a lot about their top laner and their jungler, but everybody, I mean, especially I think HTY, someone that in the last couple weeks, I think he's continued to improve very quickly throughout the tournament and be one of the better mid laners here. This team is fucking insane, man. I don't know what else to say. They're so entertaining to watch. They play their game. They play it better than most people. They hands check you in lane. Their fundamentals on the map are really good. And yeah, they make some silly mistakes, but so does everyone. And yeah, Winthrop, they are a great team. And I still think Winthrop, they've lived up to that 1 seed expectation so far. But they did lose to Morningstar in the Open Qualifier, and I think they lost to Morningstar because, just like every other team, they disrespected them. Morningstar got onto their champions and ran them over.
Yeah, they gave away the Fiora Talon, which, as we saw in Game 1 against Ole Miss, doesn't go well.
Does not go well.
If you ever give that to MorningStar White. So I have a feeling if that is the finals matchup, which maybe some people are expecting, that both of those champions are going to be banned basically the whole series, because there's no way that you're letting them get that after they just destroyed you with it in the OQ stage. I'm inclined to agree with you right now, Hawk. I think that Morningstar could be the favorites over Winthrop, but it's hard to doubt Winthrop over just how consistent they have been since, faltering and losing to Morningstar White. Basically, as soon as they lost to Morningstar White, they have very quietly just been very solid. They 2-0'd what was it? Gentle Hearts, then they 2-0'd Aporia, and then they 2-0'd their opponent last week, which was, who did they play in the quarterfinals?
They played CCG.
CCG, yeah, exactly. They rolled the floor with them. And so, Morningstar have had moments where they look a little bit, their team play maybe isn't as solid, and I think that's where Winthrop actually has the advantage because they've been playing together for almost a full year at this point. They have one of the best coaches in this space in Artemis, who has literally been on LCS stages as recently as a couple of years ago. And I think that they could be a favorite against Morningstar in a full 5-game, and I will say 5-game fearless series, because
that's true.
Morningstar, I think if you have to tag Yusin or Seoul in any way, it's probably their champ pools, and they haven't been exposed because they're playing best of 3s. In a fearless draft best of 5, they'll have to play at least 5 different champions, and you can name 5 champions probably that each of them could play. But if you start banning some of them away, things could get a little bit interesting between the two.
Here's a question though. This is what makes fearless interesting. Do you want to use 2 bans every single game to ban away Yusin's Fiora and Gwen? Or are you going to play against them and take 2 guaranteed losses against those champions because he's insane at both of them? It's tough. It's a tough answer. Yeah. And there might not be a correct one. I trust that Artemis can figure it out. I think the way I will conclude this question, maybe, if I were to give you betting odds, I would give you the lower odds on Winthrop. I think Winthrop is the Vegas favorite. However, fucking Morningstar White, they've got Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. You never know what they could do to you. So good luck.
Soul is Brock Purdy.
Soul is Brock Purdy, and Yusin is Christian McCaffrey. Then Pika Pika is George Kittle.
Oh, God. That means he's going to be useless against Winthrop next week. Okay, that's not good. All right, well, let's go. Let's go on to our last headline here, where we're going to get a little bit funky, talk about some fun things that happened here, as we had a very fun set of interactions between people that I'm gonna say friends of the program.
Yeah, friends of the show.
So if you're watching this, we don't mean any harm specifically, but this was just incredible. One of the first matchups of the entire weekend was NACL Wildcard versus Lit. It was a Lit 2-0, and things got a little bit chippy on Twitter. Kisno kept some receipts from 10 months ago when he was on Supernova playing against Winnie in the promotion tournament, where Winnie called him a little kid or something, or had to show the kid what's up or something. And then Kisno quote retweets it and said, we'll put
everything on your screen, but
Kisno,
follow them all on Twitter too.
Yeah, Kisno responds, "GG's grandpa, still a rookie though," where Winnie responds with, "Wow, you're delusional," and then. The quote retweet from Dragoon, we're just going to let it play right now.
Yeah.
Nigga wanna see me fall. Stephen Curry, how I ball. Gosha garments and a white tree on my body. I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in the best. Niggas say they run my home.
Dragoon off the top rope with this. I mean, this is the greatest. It's the questions right here. This is the greatest beef and exactly what Challengers League needs. I actually think I said this, by the way, at a couple weeks ago, that Lit is good for the league. Their players are fun. The org's fun. They got a good social presence. I'm so glad that this has happened, because yeah, this is exactly what I envision with this team joining the league. Just a bunch of memers having a great time. I hope people don't like clown on Wildcard too hard for this. I know like some of the discourse has been like, oh, Wildcard's soft or whatever, because there was also some stuff with Disguised the week before or earlier in the week. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I hope that's not the takeaway. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, Winnie, total friend of the show, dude got dunked on Twitter. It happens. It's funny. Like, I hope everyone can laugh about it. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, Winnie's gonna get him next time. That guy's still having a great split. But yeah. It's just so
We now
funny.
need a Dragoon versus Winnie boxing match.
And like these
We
are
can
players.
commentate it.
These are players that have played in tier 3 against each other for years. I mean, Winnie and Dragoon have probably played a bunch of matches against each other over the years. And then Kisno like is like again like little rookie, little kid like getting in there. Grandpa Dragoon's like, son, let me take care of this.
I was trying to think before the show if there were ever any other like beefs between teams in NACL, like and
like
this
this.
just like nothing like this. This takes the cake,
This
I
is
think,
so
in terms
good.
of
This is collegiate
how
tier
funny
beef.
it is. Yeah, I mean, it's too. Winnie's in collegiate. He knows.
Winnie's
what's
in
up.
collegiate.
So, yeah, I think this is probably the biggest reason why I'm sad that NACL is not double round robin, because if we got to see these teams play again, man, it would
We
be so
need
funny.
this matchup
We need
in
a playoff.
playoffs.
We need a playoff
Yeah.
matchup. We need a lit versus wildcard playoff.
I can already
God.
picture like NACL broadcast if this is a playoffs matchup having a field day with like a pregame segment talking about exactly what we're talking about right now. Oh,
Yeah, shout out to all of them. If y'all wanna come on the show and hash things out on Salty Runback together,
yes.
we'll welcome you with open arms. But,
Oh, it'd be so funny. I know. Shout out to both those teams. I mean, it's fun. It's entertaining. This is what the league needs, is this kind of shit. It's great.
yeah, some fun stuff, and Wildcard and Lit both impressing a little bit in the start of the season, but will they keep it up? Well, we'll see if we agree with that statement or not in our part 2, where we're bringing back an old favorite. It's Salt Street Bets. Unfortunately, this is not Salt Street Bets yet, as we have come in a little bit impromptu to discuss some other news that have happened since we last recorded our episode of Salty Runback. A 6th headline and unprecedented part 3, however you want to put it, but there was some new news that unfortunately broke regarding one of the teams in the NACL qualifiers, that being MorningStar White. Long story short, they have been disqualified, unfortunately, because their top laner, Yusin, is ineligible by the Riot rules to compete because he is here on a student visa, meaning that Morningstar will be eliminated from tournament and disqualified for the rest of the qualifier, and Aporia will be taking their spot in the semifinal matchup against Lotus.
And what a bummer. I mean, it
kind of sucks.
It kind of sucks. It's a shitty situation and an unenviable position for really anyone involved to be in. And I kind of just wish that we weren't here, but we are, and this is the reality that we live in. And I don't know, Graves. I don't know where we like. I feel like we have kind of a docket. Like there's the repercussions of what has happened, what maybe should have happened, or what we wish happened, and then like the soapbox. At least I have a soapbox. So
Yeah.
There's 3 parts to kind of tackle here. I don't know where you want to start. Maybe the repercussions of what has happened.
Yeah, so I think, as you said, like the things that I think we are here to discuss in this before we go over to Salt Street Bets, which, by the way, are going to be messed up a little bit because we've included Morningstar White in a couple of our little segments there.
They are, in fact, featured 3 times. Yeah.
We have to discuss what it means for the tournament, why Riot kind of made the decision at this point in time, and the general implications about the rule as a whole, which is a conversation that we've had on this show before, actually, following the Trick or Treat Invitational, where we had Shogo and Akashi do some good work on Summoner's Rift together in our tournament. So I guess we'll start first off in that this sucks for the tournament, for the tournament's competitive integrity, and for anyone who wanted to watch Morningstar White play in the finals. I know specifically the people that are still in the tournament, that being Ole Miss, Winthrop, and Lotus, have all expressed their discontent with not being able to play them because they're a damn good team. And if you're a good team in the qualifiers, you want to play against this other team. Morningstar and Ole Miss both have lost to Morningstar in the past. I know that they were both eager for revenge. And it sucks that because of the situation, that's not going to happen officially.
Yep, it's not gonna happen, and I think it's really tough too because honestly, I mean, we saw an outpouring of support from a lot of players in the tournament saying that they wanted to play against this team and that they wanted, hashtag let you should play, was a big thing, a little, for our little world here in Tier 3, right? And there's some people that dissent, and like the ruling as it stands, it makes sense, and it's by the book, right? And if you're Riot, if you're Rally Cry, I think making decisions by the book, like for as much, we'll talk about what maybe we wish happened, it makes sense, and it is a very valid stance to take, and it has sparked discussion about how decisions such as this will be approached in the future. I guess it's just, yeah, it's a shitty situation, and I think the main repercussion as well, Grape, so a little bit of a rabbit hole, is that so their points have now been redistributed as well, as if every single game that they played was a loss, including that means that Aporia has points for making the semifinals, and in fact will be playing in the semifinals this next weekend. Pulse Star has now technically made the quarterfinals, and Ole Miss gets 10 extra points for winning the group, as well as the 4 teams that MorningStar White played against in the Open Qualifier get 5 points for those games. So that actually has major tournament repercussions aside from like, damn, it sucks that MorningStar White can't play. There are, from my point of view, and Grapes, I know this is something we disagree on, some free points being given out here.
Yeah, I mean, the one argument is that they didn't win the games against Morningstar, so they don't deserve the points. The other argument is that if Morningstar weren't in the tournament at all, and we ran with like a 31 team bracket where, every Morningstar, game was basically a win. Like that's kind of how Riot is approaching this. It's a situation that existed last summer as well when Cold Hearted got disqualified. That actually got Lit Esports into the quarterfinals, which eventually gave them just barely enough points to actually qualify into the NACL through the promotion tournament. So
yeah,
that's a big butterfly effect there that has been caused by this similar rule. And
and theoretically a smaller butterfly
so late
effect
in the tournament. Yeah, given the fact that it's so late in the tournament this time around, it's going to mean a lot more.
Yeah.
However, take Pulse for example. If for instance the decision was made before the group stage started, they'd be in the same situation. They'd probably be in the quarterfinals anyway. And so at this point in time, like because of the fact, like I think like mathematically in my head at least it makes sense that they do get the points. But I understand where you're coming from in that they didn't earn them because they didn't win a game specifically.
The way I see it, the precedent's here with Lit, so it makes sense. Again, it makes sense, and it is what it is. The precedent though with Lit was that it was caught like immediately after the series, and Lit then still had to earn their way into the promotion tournament, right? After those games. And now everyone still does. So like that does still somewhat apply, but it's so late in the tournament that to me, there's way more of a ripple effect with reimbursing points that could not have been accounted for had this been caught early. And I think a big sticking point for me is that this should have been caught earlier. Like, if this rule was to be enforced, it should have been enforced from the beginning. And I think that's an oversight. Straight up, it happens. And I would hope that the tournament organizers in the future are able to catch this earlier or vet players in a way that prevents this situation from happening. But yeah, it's like the ripple effect of the points is a lot more substantial because I think especially Pulse and Aporia are all of a sudden in really decent spots for the promotion tournament when, they didn't win those games and they might not have to win anymore, right? And that's where it changes things for me, as opposed to Lit, where it was in group stage,
well,
and then they still had to run a gauntlet.
They're definitely going to have to win more. Like,
or they'll have to win more to qualify. They'll have to win more to qualify, yeah.
If they either lose out or end in the exact same spot as they did in the first qualifier, in the second, they will not make the tournament. I think that is something that we should make clear.
Well, Aporia could be in the same spot. Aporia could get to semis and probably be fine.
Or, get to quarters, which is like
right.
where they were originally before the points were distributed.
So
because they're like in fourth right now, but with them falling out, that would theoretically mean another team would go into the semifinals, and even if they are tied, that means that the team that with the better finish in the second qualifier actually goes through. So that's an interesting like kind of point of discussion, which I think can transition us to the idea of like the timeliness of all of this. Now, I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth, whether it be those from Morningstar or on Riot or Rally Cry side or the TOs or anything, but there's a world where, you know, the people who were signing up for the event didn't realize that they were breaking the rules when they did so, because it's a little bit counterintuitive when you think of it from a broad standpoint, which we'll get into a little bit later as we talk about the rules and the F1 visas and everything like that. But you could argue that there was a situation, like Morningstar could have been in a situation where they thought to themselves, okay, we have 5 players, they live in America, they're all here legally, they should be allowed to compete.
And they, not only, to add an addendum, they live in America with the word visa next to their status as well. Just depends on the type of visa, right? So that, you know.
And you know, people might misread the rules. They might not understand the rules all the way. There's a little box basically in Rally Cry's application process that says, can you confirm all of your players are quote-unquote eligible according to the rules? And it's very easy to just click yes and move on. And it seems like there wasn't any other process on top of that. There probably should be, because that means that, you know, if this wasn't caught, someone was actively breaking the rules and nobody from Riot was able to determine it. It took like an anonymous source telling the TOs about the situation that led to this at all. And I think this is a long way of saying, in past years there have been more like things in play and requests for verification by Tier 3 organizers. I remember specifically, I believe Unified actually had some issues with their different teams in terms of like people having like potentially passports expired or things like that, and that being actually something that resulted in, you know, either delays in the event or things having to be gone through, because that's a process that, if this is a rule that you want to enforce, you should be going through. And it just, you know, obviously creates so much havoc and disruption because it was caught so late. And you can't blame Riot. I personally don't think you can blame Riot for, you know, disqualifying the team and you know, at this point, after learning the information. I think you can criticize the fact that it happened so late and there wasn't a system in place to achieve that before.
No, I think the decision, given the circumstances, was a reasonable one, even though it's not personally the one that I would have made. But I'm with you every step of the way. The responsibility to enforce the rules should fall to the TO and not the teams. And I think that was kind of what failed here, was that the responsibility did not fall to the TO until it was brought upon them. I mean, again, like you said, this was only investigated because a team, I'm going to use the word snitched. I don't want to like start drama or anything, but I'm going to look into the camera right now and say, you all know who you are. If you're the ones that snitched, here in Tier 3, things are hard, and we should be here to build each other up, and we should be here to support each other and to help each other succeed. And I think it reflects poorly on you to snitch. And that's a personal opinion of mine. And again, like, I don't, you know, I'm disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed in those that decided that this was the course of action, because it calls into the competitive integrity of the tournament. It just seems soft to be done, you know, given the circumstances that the snitching transpired, and it potentially impacts young people's careers. And I've seen, and this is why I feel so strongly about this whole issue, and why, you know, I was tweeting about it and why I've been messaging about it, is that I have seen in my 3 years now in Tier 3, a lot of careers end. A lot more careers end than flourish. For every APA, there's a million players that will never see the LCS. For every Rafa, there's a million broadcasters that in the back of their minds, they're saying, will I ever actually make anything of this? And so I don't think we should be taking those opportunities away from each other. And I'm very disappointed that that's the case now. And that's why I feel so strongly about this issue. And yeah, that's something that weighs on me. So with that being said, I think the decision is reasonable, but you know, if this is a rule that we're going to be enforcing, we have to catch it early. We got to avoid these situations. It's just it hurts. It hurts so much to see, because Houston is a great player, right? And it's tough.
And even from like a narrative standpoint, and I'm going to be selfish here for a second. We spent a lot of time building up the storylines and the narratives of this qualifier tournament. We built up this MorningStar White team. And now it feels like a lot of our work has been uprooted and kind of, changed because of like such a late decision to this being made. And it's personally frustrating to us because, these are people and teams that we've grown to care about. We are trying to get fans engaged to care about them as well, as people who are trying to come in and have success here in our region. And it feels bad that this decision obviously came so late. I think everyone, including Riot and everyone, agrees that they wish that this was solved at an earlier point.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's necessarily useful to continue to beat like a dead horse at this point. So if you're okay with it, Hawk, we can transition into the rule itself,
Let's move
which
on.
is something that we have discussed at length, both on our social media feeds. If you want to check, I think we both had our own Twitter threads about this specific issue. But currently, the rule that USIN is currently breaking is the fact that you cannot be on an F1 student visa and compete for a team in this league, NACL or NACLQ, that is not your official collegiate program. Now, I think this is like Riot has made steps in the right direction. If you recall, a team like UST was unable to compete in the qualifiers as recently as last spring because Shogo was in violation of that and he was not a quote-unquote resident. They actually changed that going into this year, so now Shogo is able to play on Ole Miss and looks like one of the best players in the goddamn tournament. So clearly things, are willing, people are willing to change, and maybe these rules are up for change. And I think they should be, because I think they're fucking stupid, especially at this point in time when the ecosystem looks so different than what it looked like maybe when these rules were originally being put in place. I'll let you talk, Hawk, because I've been...
You're good. I don't have much to say about the rule itself other than I agree. It's dumb. We've had this conversation. I think it's outdated. It's been in place for a long time, which is why, again, I think Riot is valid for the way that they've enforced it. But what I wish happened is this situation came up and we saw that we're in the semifinals of a tournament with a bright player's future on the line. And Riot in that moment was able to say, hey, I think we should make a pivot. That's not what happened. And they have actually told us that, they're discussing where to go forward with the rule, which is a good thing. And the rule is just outdated. There people cite tax reasons, which has there's been a lot of speculation on Twitter, but people cite tax reasons, which have generally been refuted. It seems people cite reasons of importing people for tier 3. No fucking person is importing people for tier 3. Now that the minimum salary requirement for Challengers League is gone, it's not a conflict of interest between work and school. And these players just aren't imports. Yeah, they're not from North America, but they're living here to get an education. We should be building them up. And so that's why I would like to see this rule done away with in its entirety, if possible, to remove any and all restrictions, so long as that the players are, playing with the understanding of hey, make sure you do your taxes properly. Make sure you're not breaking any laws. That kind of thing. So
yeah, I think I agree almost 100% with you, because it is true. There's a world where you're a 17-year-old, you are living in another country, your parents decide to move to the United States for one reason or another. You're on a student visa and you love playing League of Legends, you're good at it, and you don't have a green card yet specifically, maybe if you're on you're out here via for school or whatever, but maybe you want to, be able to compete and be a part of this ecosystem one way or the other. I think that is a part of our country. That's a part of, how other sports end up working. And so I don't see a reason why that should be different. I think the rule was likely, installed during a time where Tier 3 had a little bit more money in it. There were organizations like 100 Thieves Next that were really putting a lot of infrastructure into that space, and you could potentially see a world where we start importing like Chinese Tier 3 players over to NA to like build them up through that pipeline. I can understand why you want restrictions in place for that specifically, but for an F1 visa, like being a student, an international student, that is not even close to what it is. And there also are instances in the past where other companies, I think Red Bull specifically with their Valorant tournament that happened a couple of months ago, actually changed the ruling, because of some certain situation. And it's possible to actually it's possible to earn money as an international student on an F1 as long as it's not like a salary and it's like a prize or like a normal kind of entity of money or something. Our graphics producer Leanne talked to us a little bit about it, and I think that situation specifically makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think that is going to be hopefully something that Riot considers moving forward.
How based is Seoul, by the way, for saying if we really couldn't take the money, we donate it all to charity? They just want the opportunity to play. So yeah.
I will offer a quick question to you, because theoretically, like, these guys should be allowed to play, obviously, but they're not the same as an import or like a resident player in terms of the LCS. Like, if Shogo played in the LCS, I think he would still take up an import slot if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
So my question to you is that, the NACL currently allows for 1 import per team. If there's like an F1 visa situation, should that be a restriction for potential qualifier teams? Unless maybe the caveat situation is if they are with a school like Ole Miss, for instance, who have multiple players, Shogo and Stray specifically, in those regards. So, like, is a team like Lotus or Morningstar able to have maybe just one of these exceptions for somebody on a student visa?
That's a great question, honestly. Because I feel very strongly that, like, I don't want to use the word imports when talking about people here on an F1 visa, because they're not coming here to play League of Legends, right? And I think maybe that's where some of the nuance is lost on people that are against a rule change, is like, oh, like, they're going to take, imports, like, they're traumatized from the LCS. But, like, they're not here to play League of Legends, guys, okay? And there's not enough money in the ecosystem for that to be viable. Now, 10 years down the line, if we're somehow still here and the money's back, maybe we would need the rule in place again. But that's not the reality we live in right now. And so given that, I would hesitate to enforce a restriction because I don't feel that these players are imports. However, but
they are imports under the LCS. So that's
right.
my
So
process.
no, and I'm with you on that. So that's why I don't know. I actually don't know.
I personally, I've come to the conclusion on my own as we've been recording this that I think that could be a reasonable solution to this.
I think especially if Riot or whoever wanted to say, let's be conservative about this and not make, we're pushing for already some large changes. So if they wanted to build things in place to still add protections and not completely strike down a system in one go, I think that's understandable. And I would not dislike a rule like that, and I think I would not feel strongly about it.
Yeah.
So
theoretically, if you had 3 different students on student visas playing in the qualifiers together, and Dignitas looks at them and says, "Hey, you guys are good. I'm gonna pick you up," they wouldn't be allowed to.
Right.
Technically, if I'm remembering the rules.
No, you're
correctly.
right. You're right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I will say I don't even think Dignitas. Now this is where I don't know. I don't know if a player here on a student visa could play in the LCS, because that gets into legality requirements regarding full-time work, what kind of visa you're on. I'm not an expert on that. But that is actually my understanding. I don't think any of these players would be able to play LCS unless they reapplied for a different type of United States visa to then either be considered an import or, if they got their green card, be able to play here as a resident. I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole, but that's at least my understanding. So yeah,
who you got in the semifinals now? Is it Aporia or Lotus?
I got Lotus. I think this team's kind of got some fire to them, and I think stylistically, I think Lotus matches up okay into Aporia. I think Frost Force is really good at neutralizing carry junglers, and I don't think that Sam McKinn is going to punish Aojun as hard as some other teams have been able to. And Lotus' team fighting has been pretty poggers. Aporia has looked a little dead in the water as far as like map play. So
Yeah, I'm confused why Aporia has had so many games in a row where they just kind of do nothing and
Yeah.
either win or lose the game.
and their
depending
team
on the
fighting is
situation.
really good. Like they're a really fundamentally sound team. It just looks like they just do nothing. I don't know what's up.
I'm a little confused about that, but hopefully we'll see some aggression out of them because I know that they have the players to do so, right? Like we see Music be so aggressive, like
Yeah.
when he's on rock bottom, when he's on Supernova. Either way, I feel like it's a good way to cap things off unless you have any last
Little
points.
positive note.
But we're excited for the upcoming tournament. I'm not sure if we are going to release this on its own because we've gone a little bit longer than we might have expected, or we're including it in the current episode that'll be out tomorrow or out on Friday morning. But either way, we'll either conclude the episode here or we'll send you to Salt Street Bets. We're here for the third time in the history of Salty Runback for everybody's favorite segment, Salt Street Bets.
It's not my favorite segment.
It's my favorite. We're eating well once again. It's time for Daddy to make his cash here once again. Once the split, we if you're not familiar, this is where we bet on NACL teams and predict how good they're going to be throughout the rest of the season. So there's a lot of fun things. We have some new twists for this season. I'm very excited, Hawk, and hopefully you'll do a little bit better than the last couple of times.
Hopefully, Grapes, you say Daddy's going to make his cash. For me, I'm about as poor in Salt Street Bets as I am in real life. So it's it's looking rough. Yeah, I'm going to need a bank loan after this if this doesn't go well for me. Got to pay my rent.
Yeah, well, let's get into the rules and what looks a little bit different this time, which might give you an advantage or not. There are 3 parts as we had last time. However, part 1 has a little bit of a twist. As per usual, we each bet $1,000 on 3 different teams, and we can allocate that money however we want. This time around, though, we'll pick 2 teams that we want to invest in and 1 team that we want to short. What shorting means is betting on that team to drop in value, to drop in stock, to finish lower than they currently are right now. So for the invested teams, if they finish 2 places or higher than where they are right now, our money that we invested in them will double. If they finish 2 places lower than they are right now, we lose all the money that we stuck into that team. And the exact opposite happens for a team that we short. So if they finish 2 places or below, that we will, lose money. We'll double our money. If they finish higher than where they are right now, we will lose all of our money.
Yeah. And then after that, we dive into talking about the qualifiers a little bit, where each of us has just picked 4 teams that we think are going to be the promotion tournament representatives from the NACL qualifiers. And we get incrementally more money for each team we get correct. So $250 for 1, $500 for 2, $1,000 for 3, and $2,000 for all 4 correct. In addition, we have now instituted a bonus for each team that not only gets into the promotion tournament, but actually promotes into the LCS Challengers League itself to add a little incentive for making sure those teams are included. And finally, for our part 3, we've got the prop bets, where this one, pretty straightforward. Each prop bet is for $100, and then the other co-host will set the odds for that prop bet. So, if I say, okay, that one's 3-1, then if it hits, you lose, or you get 300, or if it misses, you lose everything.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's gonna be pretty exciting in that part 3. We each are gonna pick 2 of those prop bets.
Yep.
And one of them will be about the NACL, one of them will be about the qualifiers. The last thing that we forgot to mention in that part 1 that I'm just remembering because I've completely forgot about it is towards the bottom right there. You see that we also have bonuses depending on how well each team actually places. So for the teams that we invest in, if a team finishes first, we'll triple the money that's currently in there. If they finish second, we'll double it. If they finish third, we'll multiply it by 1.5. And then for the teams that we short, if they finish in the bottom 2, they will have a 1.5 multiplier, and if they are fully relegated from the league, we'll get 3 times our cash. So it adds a little bit of extra incentive, and now we're preying on some teams' downfalls, Hawk, which could be good for content, but could also cause some drama.
We decided that with the entertaining drama of the Challengers League this last week, we wanted to get a piece of the action and make more of you all mad. That way, look, all I know, Grapes, is every time we have bet against a team, at least for myself, on the show, they have immediately turned around and gotten a lot better. So I expect nothing less than for that to happen again.
Yeah, the EG moment from last summer is the first thing that comes to my mind, and yeah, I think that we probably both should have bet on them, and we ended up not doing that. So, without further ado, let's get into our portfolios. We're gonna start with our part one, and Hawk, what do we have here? Ooh, some spice.
What do we have here? Well, Grapes, we have a couple of brilliant investments. I have invested in having Disguise and AoE both move up into the standings. Coincidentally, our 7th and 8th place teams. AoE currently at 1 and 2, Disguise at 1 and 3, and then we have Lit Esports sitting in 5th that I have chosen to short at 2 and 2.
Wow.
So just as a reminder, Disguise needs to finish 6th or better for me, AoE 5th or better, Lit 7th or worse. I know, I feel so bad praying on Lit's downfall. I need the meme of Thanos saying, "I'm sorry, little one," because I really like this Lit team. Unfortunately, I just think realistically this team will probably finish bottom half and not top half, which makes this a pretty safe bet in my eyes, especially considering 2 of their wins currently are over some of the lower table teams. I'm sorry, Lit. I love you, and I think you're so entertaining. But, like, first of all, if Lit finishes, like, 7th, I would consider that a massive success for their season. And in addition, I would get money for it.
Yeah, Lit dropping wouldn't be super surprising. When you think about how the playoff format actually works, you're basically betting on them to go 0-2 in their double elimination best of 3s. So they lose the upper bracket, and then they immediately lose the lower bracket. That'll put them at 7th and 8th, tied for that spot, and you will get your money doubled in that scenario for Lit. So it's not a bad decision, and you basically need them to win 2 of those best of 3s in playoffs against 2 very solid teams in the NACL to have a chance at losing your money. So I think that makes a lot of sense. The other 2 teams are interesting as well, because I think Disguise is a team that had a lot of expectations, and they have only a couple of games played so far, which means that they still have some chance to make up some ground. And in my opinion, as soon as they enter the playoff bracket, there's a good chance that they could beat anybody and actually go on a bit of a run.
Yeah, Disguise has been a weird one because they picked up that win over Wildcard to keep themselves out of the very bottom of the standings, but I will say this team has not really shown me much so far. I think the main thing, at this point, I feel pretty confident that Disguise will at least not finish lower than Mirage, so I have a pretty good shot of pushing, and this team just feels like it has too much talent to stay at the bottom for the entire split. Like, I'm going to kind of expect things to regress to the mean, shall we say, regress to expectation as things continue, and I think Disguise will be one of the beneficiaries of that. And again, teams like Lit, potentially Wildcard, might drop a little bit in kind. AoE in a similar position, they have played only 3 matches so far.
Yeah,
they are
so
1
it's
and
really
2.
speculative.
A
They
ton
have so much
of
of their season left to play.
yeah, a ton of volatility with this team. But there's 2 reasons why I like this bet. One is that AoE has only lost in 3 game series so far, while they 2-0'd Team Liquid. This means 2 things. One, they took a game off of Maryville. They're one of only 2 teams to do so, which tells me they can beat anyone. Additionally, having a 2-0 head-to-head over Team Liquid, like, I feel like it's very unlikely that this team finishes bottom 2, which is what would have to happen for me to lose my money. Because I think they're better than those teams, and they have a head-to-head, and they've got, like, game score kind of working in their favor as well. So a lot of things going for them to keep them out of that bottom 2. Ignore the loss to Mirage. The other thing, I still think this team's going to be really good. I was high on them. The loss to Mirage was bad. Choosing to believe it's a blip on the radar. I think they got a lot of time to scale into the split. And, you know, even if they finish middle of the pack could be in 5th place. Double my money.
Yeah, you're hoping that, you know, that loss to Mirage really was a fluke, because it didn't look great to lose to that team that is 0-5. I think that so far they've been a little bit disjointed. I think Wixie's has been playing really well. Zamudo will do the same thing, where he'll look really good for one game and really look bad for a couple of others. And so far, it's been a little bit more of the coin flipping, landing tails and heads. And then mid jungle has been kind of what we've expected, which is like fine, which is like, you know, okay. But I think honestly, just like based off the way that they're placed right now in 7th, because they're 1 and 2, it makes a lot of sense for you to put a big
Yeah.
chunk of your money
Like,
in there.
it would
So,
just be surprising to me if they went down. They could go down. I could see like Disguise passing them, but I don't know. Are they going to finish 9th or 10th? Probably not. I hope not.
Yeah. All right, so 3 solid teams for you. I picked 3 totally different teams in my portfolio, so we could take a look at that right now. And we have here, I think, a little bit of a similar concept for you in our first bet. That's Team Liquid. I'm putting a little bit more money on them than you put on Disguise. I think because they're placed
I'm not
lower.
confident Disguised.
It makes because they're placed lower. I think it helps because I think we're gonna add a clause here where if they finish 10th, I'm gonna have my money because there's like not any further that they can go. That way, I don't just get a guaranteed 400. But in my head, this is basically a guaranteed 400 because I think that the way that TL are built, they have players like I think Romer specifically in the mid lane was a big question mark, but he's actually probably been one of their best players so far in this season. Spawn had a good first game against in their last matchup that they played and against Supernova, and I think the other players still have the opportunity to be really solid and at their peaks are all like top 3 or 4 in their respective roles at the minimum. So I have confidence that they'll at least get out of the basement, and they just basically need to win 1 playoff series for me to make my money, for me to double that $400. And there's a very low chance, in my opinion, that I'll end up losing it. The other 2 groups that I have is I'm kind of taking a page out of your book from last year, Hawk, where I am going super hard on that first place team. And in a similar vein, I'm going to play a little bit safe with my short bet. I have FlyQuest, who are currently in first place. I'm putting $300 on them because they have looked very, very solid. They were the favorites coming into the season, and they are the favorites still now. They need to basically, if they finish 3rd, I lose like a little bit because of the math, because I'll lose my money, but then
I think you'd lose like 150 or something. I don't know how the math works, but
yeah. So that's if they finish top 2, then I will get a big chunk of money because of the bonuses that end up coming in. And I think in more situations than not, Flycast will end at least in that top 2 with the way that they're playing right now. Surdy and Shaden look amazing. Quad actually has stepped up. We were expressing doubts about our Korean mid lane friends in the LCS affiliate teams, and they both looked very good. And I think Sajid and Chime are kind of doing what they were supposed to do, in that Sajid is being helped by an experienced support. This team is very good. I expect them to keep being very good. I have them
now
succeeding.
This bet has historically not worked out for either of us.
Yeah,
when we
the
bet
last
on the
2
first
times it's not been great. I bet on Dignitas, and then you bet on TL in summer.
Yeah, because you're putting the farm on this team theoretically being top 2, like really, or top 3, like you lose a little bit. But if they aren't in the podium finish, it's really bad. Now, what I will say, I think FlyQuest is the most overwhelming favorite we've had so far. I would say.
We said that about TL. We said that about Team Liquid in the summer.
That Team Liquid team was pretty good. But like, I don't know, it's hard because there's so much parity in the Challengers League and anyone can beat anyone, you know? But I feel like FlyQuest is the strongest relative to the pack team that we've had so far. Because also, they're not just the strongest relative to the pack in terms of performance, but also on paper, I think most people expected this FlyQuest team to be the best. So they were expected to be the best. So far, they've been the best. Whereas for both Team Liquid, TL and Dignitas back in the day, they weren't necessarily expected to be the best, and then they ended up being the best, and then they couldn't keep being the best, and so maybe a little bit more volatility there.
I am having hope. I think 3rd time's a charm for our betting the first place team.
I hope not.
For my short, we're going with Mirage Alliance. Now, obviously, they can't drop any further, so I'm not going to be getting any bonuses from that. But if they finish in the bottom 2, I get my 1.5 increase guaranteed. So there's a situation where if you bet on a team to lose, to drop places and not finish in the bottom 2, you actually make more money. But I was looking around, and it was hard to like really find a team that I could have maybe had that situation happen with. I was very close between Mirage Alliance and actually Cincinnati Fear, who are sitting in 4th place and have also, like AoE, only played 3 series, because it's hard for me to imagine a situation where they finish top 2, but I also don't necessarily think it's super likely that they'll end like below the 7th and 8th mark and things like that. So I felt a little bit more inclined to just take what I think is a little bit more guaranteed, but like the floor for this bet is higher, but the ceiling for this bet is going to be lower. Unless Mirage end up getting relegated, which also could happen, but I'm more betting on the fact that they're going to end in that bottom 2.
I mean, I'm just going to be straight with you. Like, if you think that, like, this is probably a 1.5er. Like, it's very unlikely that Mirage Alliance gets out of the bottom 2. If you think that they're going to get relegated, this is a great bet as well, because it's like basically only upside if that's your assumption. So I do think that there's a lot going for this. Definitely probably the safest short that you could have made. I think honestly Lit was probably the next safest one, just given expectation, but even they have honestly played some pretty good games. Because Noah Messages I know have been impressing some people. So
another team that surpassed expectations so far is a team like Maryville, and so are you going to short them? Right now, I'm not.
No, ain't no one short of Maryville. Nobody shorting Maryville.
Yeah, when you look at expectations compared to now, you could look at Maryville, you could look at Lit, you could look at another team like that, like Wildcard even, as potentially being teams to short, but they've been playing decent. So I felt a little bit bad trying to screw them over in a way, or hope that they end up performing worse.
Yeah. Graves, you have a very polarizing ballot. I went very mid-table. All of my 3 teams are in between your 3 teams. If that makes sense.
I go
because I have
at the top and then at
8,
the
7, 5, and you have 1, 9, 10.
Well, that means that there's the highest possibility for volatility, at least for my 9th at least. So we'll see. I think it's safe and dangerous at the same time for me. So I really don't know how this is going to turn out. We can move on to our next part, which is where we go through the teams that we think are going to make it to the promotion tournament. And Hawk, we're going to start things off with 3 of our 4 semifinalists, but then the Redbirds at 4.
I got to keep being spicy, Grapes. Look, I don't think I have to explain too much. We talked about Winthrop and MorningStar. They're the obvious favorites. I think Ole Miss, at this point, probably the 3rd strongest team. And then we come to our 4th team. Now, the Redbirds. I just feel like, I said this to Grapes before we started recording, this team is just as likely to go 0-5 in this next open qualifier as they are to win the next tournament, which is just to say, I have no fucking clue what this team's going to do, but they're super hype and I love watching them. And they took Ole Miss to 3 in a pretty competitive series. So I think that there's a world where Redbird actually sneaks in there, because we also had this conversation, Grapes, that the championship points are very, very close between every single team. Morningstar, Winthrop, and Ole Miss are the top 3. Then Lotus and BlackRock both have the same amount of points at 75. And then below that, I think it's actually Redbird at 65. You would have then Aporia at 60. There's a lot. The championship points are very close because no teams have run away with this tournament at all. Leaving the door open for that third, 4th spot to really happen. And I was going to put BlackRock here, but then I saw Kitsuo posted a looking for team on Twitter, so I took them off.
Yeah, we don't know what exactly is happening.
We don't know what's happening.
Yet.
If BlackRock,
maybe by the time the episode comes out, we will. But
yeah.
Right now, a bit up in the air, and so we're hesitant to stick them in.
If BlackRock runs back their roster for the next open qualifier, I'm going to look like a jackass for this ISU pick, but it's fine. I'm doing it for content. I do think ISU actually has a legitimate shot. It's really whether or not BlackRock with the same roster, pretty strong. Aporia, pretty strong. Lotus, obviously, pretty strong, but none of them particularly convincing. And honestly, I think ISU had a really great showing in this tournament. I think their quarterfinal exit was one of the more impressive runs, and they might be able to do it again.
I mean, the games that they won, they finished first in their group, right? And they looked like one of the best teams, execution-wise, in the tournament.
They looked fantastic.
Well. And even against Ole Miss, they won a game. They won their game too. And it is, I think, very solid the way that ISU have looked. And that is not something that we've always been able to say about this team. And so I honestly do not hate your pick, because they were playing some damn good League of Legends. That mid-jungle, specifically, Cross and Drew Dozer.
I think they were legitimately one of the best mid-jungles in the tournament.
Yeah.
They were insane.
No, for real. Yeah. I think I agree with you. They were definitely up there. And The fact that they're also pretty close in points means that they only need to win one more series than Ole Miss, assuming that Ole Miss ends up losing in the next round. Or actually, so basically the situation is ISU need to stay at the same level in terms of Swiss points and all of that. But essentially, if they win one more series, then the loser of this Winthrop Miss series, they will pass them in terms of the standings for promotion. So that is what we're banking on here.
And you
got to
remember
really think that's going to happen.
You got to remember as well, like they could pass Winthrop or Ole Miss, but really they just have to outperform again those three teams that I listed: BlackRock, Lotus, and Aporia, which is completely doable. I think, just to maybe talk a little bit more about my personal expectations for the next tournament, out of those three, if BlackRock does not have the same roster, they kind of fall off. And then I would actually consider Aporia to probably be my personal strong pick for tournament 2. But Redbirds got it. I don't know. They got it.
All right. Let's take a look at my group. I also have the same first 3 teams. However, I might be a little bit of a spicy one, but I got Team Fish Taco making a run. This would be really good for me if it happens, because I don't think the expectations are necessarily on their side after a very disappointing series against CCG. They only have 35 points. You were talking about how other teams are pretty close in terms of points. Taco right now is not. However, I have faith in this team. If they go on a run to at least finals, if not winning the entire thing, they would put themselves in a decent spot to make it, depending on how the other teams end up lining up. So I do think that Team Fish Taco have a good chance, and they have solid players. They just need to fix their freaking comms and play like humans after the mid game, and they will, I think, be in a good position to potentially make the promotion tournament.
This is spicy take, Grapes. I know in our last episode we talked about who's in the inner circle of promotion favorites, right? And I think both of us kept Team Fish Taco as still a part of the inner circle, and teams actually like Ole Miss and ISU, BlackRock as well, on the outside looking in. BlackRock was in the inner circle, but ISU and Ole Miss were not. Yeah, clearly Ole Miss, after their back-to-back wins this weekend, I think they deserve to be a part of, we basically said they've got to prove it, and they did. Can't complain there. They proved it. Team Fish Taco, for me, I'm voting them off the island. This team looked too bad in the first tournament. I mean, yeah, they do still have the talent level to go back and make it to finals or win the whole thing in tournament 2. It absolutely could happen. I'm not willing to bet on that. So here we are.
I am having flashbacks to summer 2022, which is when Team Fish Taco officially came back into League of Legends for the first time in a couple of years. Limo was also on that team, actually. It was Limo and Toasty with Alorum, originally Shoryu, but then ended up being somebody else. And then I don't remember who
Did
the
they
support
have
was
you
exactly.
red on that team? No, that was Team Fish Taco 23.
That was Team Fish Taco Spring. Yeah, but
no,
Taco in summer actually, now that I think about it, had a very similar run to the way that this is going right now, where they barely missed out on top 8 in the first qualifier, and then they missed the tournament entirely in the second. They went 2-3, which is not ideal for them. Of course, the rest of their players are currently doing pretty well. 2 of them, Alorum and Toasty, in the NACL. But goes to show that Taco in these tournaments have been a little bit high, a little bit low sometimes in terms of their success. And so I am taking a bit of a gamble with them right now. I was thinking about a team like Lotus, who I think their bot lane specifically is playing very, very well, and they have some really good shot callers in Frost and Porsche. But I don't know. I guess we're going for Spice as well. It feels bad to leave off, for us to both leave off one of the semifinalists, but here we are.
It's tough. I think Lotus has played really well. I just look, unless they beat MorningStar, I think this team is still a quarterfinals tier team. I say in quotes because obviously they proved that they can beat a team like BlackRock. But I don't know. I hope this serves as lighting a fire into the players. I know I said something to Cam about what I thought of Lotus, and they're like, "Can I send this to the players?" I'm like, "Go for it." I want to be proven wrong, but I think Lotus has looked good, but I still have not seen enough from them to make me believe that they're a true contender. However, I do think that their strong showing this tournament is definitely commendable and keeps them at least in the conversation.
Yeah, especially with getting those extra 20 points, which I think actually ties them with BlackRock because of the amount of wins that they had and the extra 10 points from finishing first in your group that BlackRock has.
They didn't finish
Lotus
first
doesn't.
in their... Oh, wait. Yeah, I see.
So BlackRock, I think, right now are tied with Lotus, which makes things a little bit interesting if that roster stays together.
Did
Last
Lotus
big
go
thing.
3-2 or 4? They went 4-1, so they should be 5 points ahead of Black
Oh,
Rock
they're
right
5
now.
points ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last thing about Ole Miss, because we haven't talked about them at all. Great bounce back. Top side played much better. Stray was somebody we called out for having a pretty bad performance against MorningStar White. I think was honestly a more important player than Shogo was in both their series that they ended up playing. That was because they targeted both teams, decided that we were going to camp the hell out of bot lane, but Stray made them pay. And I think that will be a narrative that we will continue to follow going into the semifinal matchup.
Maybe the narrative is just that every top laner looks bad against Houston. I mean, like, that might just be the story.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's head into our prop bets now. We each have an NACL and a qualifier prop bet. Here we go, Hawk. What are we going with here?
Well, Grapes, here's what we got is my first prop bet, my NACL prop bet. UG for, I believe, 3 or 4 consecutive splits or something like that, was a finalist for the most valuable prospect voting amongst the NACL talent team. I was having a conversation with Matt the other day, Cubby, and he was telling me about this. Like, this guy is literally always so good and so highly regarded for his individual performance. And would you look at the time, Maryville is kicking ass once again, and a lot of that is because of this player. So yeah, whether or not he wins MVP, I think he'll be a finalist.
Now, if you had him winning MVP, I'd give you some pretty good odds because just there are so many good players right now, and especially because of the fact that UG's been around in NACL for a while.
Dare I
Maybe
say
we're
this
not-
one actually says he
not
will
that.
not win MVP? I think I lose this bet if he. Do I lose this bet if he wins MVP?
No. If he's MVP,
Okay.
you win this bet. I think right now he is a finalist, and so with that being said, I don't think I can give you super high odds on this one because of the fact that he is probably one of the players that I would expect to make some run, especially with how Maryville are playing right now. Somebody like Shaden or Surdy also kind of come to mind right now. I think giving most valuable prospect to somebody like Chime, who is just in LCS, is a little bit. I don't think that would actually end up happening, but maybe Surdy could get a nod. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head who some other potential MVP candidates are, but I think I'll give you like 2-1. I mean, or 3
2 to
like,
1.
That's
2
what's
to
like a
1.
50%.
There's okay.
What?
There's 50.
There's
50
5
players.
candidates.
There's 50 players in the NACL and 5 candidates. Like,
Yeah, but right now Yuji's like probably in the top 3.
right now, less than halfway through the season. Like, I mean, when you bet on the MVP or like any sort of things like that for like the NFL or whatever, those odds are like, even when Lamar Jackson had just blasted the 49ers on Monday Night Football, I'm pretty sure that guy's odds were still like 32 to 1 to win MVP or something, like, or 17 to 1.
It was like no, I think it was higher. I think it was like plus 200 or so, which is like 3 to 1. But
okay. All right.
in that related field, if you had him winning MVP again, my odds would be pretty high. It'd be like 5, 6, 7 to 1.
But UG hasn't blasted Brock Purdy on Monday Night Football yet. He's only like taken out, the Rams.
I don't know. I think that
Look, if they had already beaten FlyQuest and UG like ran over Shaden, I'd accept 2 to 1. But I'm thinking like 3 or 4 to 1. Come on. I mean,
going back to the NFL analogy right now, if you put odds on somebody to win MVP at the start of the season, it would be really high. If you had them like finishing in like the top 5 or so, I think it would be lower because of the fact that there's this like circle of players that we're all expecting to kind of be in that conversation. And Yuji, having been a finalist for the last 3 years, is probably primed to get at least to that top 5 again.
but he's on a new team, new environment.
With the same mid
The same mid laner that just runs the league with him.
I'll go to 3 to. I'll
3
go
to 1.
3
3 to 1. 3 to 1. 3 to 1's acceptable.
I'll go 3 to 1. You
acceptable.
convinced me.
Hell yeah.
Man, I really think it's like a 33% chance that Yuji is in the top 5. I feel like it's higher than that, but you might have.
There's a lot of games left to play.
Yeah, that's true. If Maryville dropped down to 6th, Yuji's probably not a finalist. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so that I think makes a bit of sense. All right, my prop bet for the NACL. We're going player specific again, and that is Dragoon on Lit Esports. I don't think he hasn't got a pentakill yet. I think he will get one this split, whether it's on Darius or somebody else like Olaf, which is a champion that he's pretty comfortable on. This guy, I think, has actually been playing very well in his first split in Tier 2. Even that series against FlyQuest, like he was matching up against 30 pretty well in both of those series. I think that this guy is a very good top laner, and he's the kind of guy that you can put resources around and he will pop off on. Specifically that Mordekaiser game that he had against FlyQuest, like I believe that was what happened. He's had a couple of Mordekaiser 1v9s, as well as the Darius that we already know of. I think he has a pentakill in this season.
Dude, this joke's going to make no sense because this episode is going to come out after Valentine's Day, but I think Graves wants to get Dragoon smashed for Valentine's Day. I think that's the only explanation. Nah, dude, Dragoon, I'm pretty convinced the more I watch this player play, like, he's a DAWG dog, man. Like, he's just, it doesn't matter who he's against. Put him on his champs, let him play his game, and Dragoon is gonna pop off. He's gonna look solid. Love watching him play. Whether or not he gets a pentakill, ooh, this is for both
like
regular
super
season and playoffs, right?
Yeah, it's not super likely is what my argument would be. Only a couple pentakills actually happen in this season. But I would say that Dragoon has a high chance of getting it. Higher than basically anyone except for maybe like the ADCs, because the ADCs can always pop off.
I'm going to temperature check you with these odds, and it might be higher, but what do you say about like 7-1?
Ooh, I'll take that. You know what? I'm not even going to negotiate. I'll take that.
Okay, all right, yeah.
I think that's fine.
Where it's like, because, I think if anyone on... Actually, I think anyone on Lit could get a pentakill, honestly, but...
yeah, no, that's true.
But it's like, it's in Dragoon's DNA, though, to get pentas, and it's definitely not likely, because pentakills are rare, but also, like, I feel like the way Lit plays the game, it makes it weirdly likely, so I'm willing to give you that.
Yeah, I'll take 7. He has a max of... 5 more Darius games that he can play throughout the rest of the season. So
that's just regular season.
Regular season, yeah. So, at least that, and then whatever other champions.
Just wait till he gets to Everfrost Nasus pentakill. You guys ain't ready for that.
Oh god. Okay, I know for a fact it's not gonna happen on that champion.
Yo, Alawi just got buffed though. I don't think last week of NACL was not when Alawi was perma strong, right? So.
We might get some Alawi actually.
Because that patch was just. Wait, no,
it's 14.3. No, that was live. But
okay,
I still think that.
Well, though we can still see it. We can still see it.
We can still definitely see it. Yeah. All right, Hawk. 7-1, 3-1 for you. Let's go on to the qualifiers. What's your first prop bet?
My mic is falling all over the place, but yeah, let's check out my qualifiers prop bet. This one maybe getting a little unhinged. Another player focused one. MorningStar White player gets picked up by an LCS team. It's gonna happen. I'm telling you, these guys are just better. They're just better. Specifically looking at their top laner.
Notice you have 2 specific champions in that box right there.
I have 2 specific champions. I think it could be like Yusin. I think it could be Sol. Sol has said that he is going to win Worlds for North America this year. If that is going to happen, then my prop bet needs to hit. There's no other explanation. I'm gonna just say it. Look, I'm not like a professional scout or coach or anything, and my eye for this is not on that level. But I have seen Yusin so thoroughly gap every single top lane in this tournament. I just said a couple minutes ago, maybe the narrative is that Yusin just makes everybody look bad. I refuse to believe that he'd be the worst top laner in the LCS if he were to play tomorrow. The mechanical level that this player plays at is just unreal. And very rarely makes big mistakes. Like, the team fighting fundamentals are insane. I've just seen so many lane dominant performances, carry performances, and like the only thing is Yusin has gotten caught out on side lanes a couple times. But that
whichever top laner
every
does.
Top laner, every 1v9 top laner ints on side lanes from time to time. Yeah. I just think this player is different and clearly a level above at least our tier 3 level of play. And Sol as well, what has impressed me so much about this player is similar to Yusin actually, the commitment to playing his own style. Sol, just playing assassins, playing his champs, and I think debunking this idea that like assassins can't be made to work in competitive. It's not just that Sol is good at these assassins. He actually gives them a role within his team's compositions that then the team is able to play to. And that is really impressive to me. And I think that's something that if an LCS team were able to embrace that could actually be really valuable.
So I have 2 questions for you before I set my odds. First question. Does this mean mid-split, like during the spring split, the next like 3 weeks of the regular season? We have a 2-week break, so it could happen then. Or is it like after the season as we go into off season?
I guess it depends on when we calculate this, but in my head, it's like when we go into off season, what I think would still count.
Okay. Second question, LCS level, or if they get picked up by Team Liquid or FlyQuest Challengers, does that also count?
That's a good question. I did not think about that.
Do you want to just say LCS
I'm
team?
just gonna
like
say LCS team. I'm
starting
just gonna
roster?
say LCS team because I also think it's like actually not unlikely that, for example, Surdy plays an LCS in the summer split, and FlyQuest Challengers needs a new top laner, something along those lines.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say my odds would have gone down if that happened
Yeah.
because I do think it's likely that that could be something that happens for Morningstar. Going straight into LCS from amateur is not something that a lot of players do. We think of Jojo, or not even Jojo. We think of who, like basically kind of Danny.
Danny kind of did it.
And yeah, like that's not really
Niles
not
and
really a very
Iconic.
common thing at this point. Yes, that's also true. I will put this pretty high. I'll stick. I'll go 10-1. I think if this happens, you win.
If this happens, I win. I'll take that.
Actually, that's not necessarily true because if we all get 4 of the promotion teams right, I think it's $2,000. So like things still kind of go around. But I'll go 10-1. You know what? Fuck it. I'll go 20-1. Actually,
Yeah.
no.
No,
We'll go back-
but no take backsies.
Okay. Going straight to we'll settle 15.
15
We'll settle
to 1. 15 to 1. 15 to
I
1.
think like if we think about it, the percentage chance that this happens isn't super high.
So low.
However, like it would make a decent amount of sense.
If
like,
this
I'm not gonna
happened,
lie.
if this happened, I think the story would be way crazier than me potentially winning at Salt Street Bets. That's how crazy this prop bet is, I think. The other ones are like they could make for a cool Twitter clip or like, you know, an LCS EV tweet. This would like be crazy. You know, Travis Gafford would be in on this. He would do an interview with me
that's
about how
so
I predicted
funny.
this. No, he wouldn't. But
Uh,
he'd probably do an
I
interview
don't
with the
know.
player that got picked up for LCS. That might be the better
Yeah,
interview.
I don't know if he's calling the Salty Runback host to talk
Yeah,
about that,
yeah.
but,
Maybe he would rather interview the player that gets picked up for LCS and not the guy that said he's LCS ready. But yeah, you get
yeah.
it.
Let's go. All right, let's get into our last prop bet. That's from me on the qualifier side. I have a prop bet that's similar to what we were talking about with Team Fish Taco, but Team Fish Taco are not included in this. A team that made playoffs in the first open qualifier misses the GSL stage in OQ2. That means that they go 2-3 or worse in that Swiss bracket, and they will be not in the top 16 and effectively eliminated from play.
This is crazy.
I think yours is a little crazier than mine.
This
I'm
is
not gonna
definitely
lie.
not as crazy as mine for sure. But I mean, going like missing the open qualifier, that does not happen too much. Odds. I'm thinking
It's interesting because like a team like UCI or Taco, like teams that had high expectations and then kind of disappointed and missed the playoffs, I think maybe have a higher chance of potentially missing groups.
Is it
Um,
weird that I think that this is less likely than a Dragoon Pentakill? Or yeah, less likely.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to set your odds. I'd be happy with it because that means more potential money for me. But I think it like could happen. Also, there's a world where like roster changes happen. In a world where one of these teams ceases to exist, I don't get any of the money. That doesn't.
Can we
count.
have Can we
It's
have like a
team that,
3 out of 5 players clause? Like if BlackRock looks completely different next split,
Right, if it's just like 5 new players.
this
yeah.
doesn't count, right? Like
No, I would say like the core at least has to remain the same.
okay. 5 or 6 to 1 is maybe where I'm at. Or I could just do the 7 again.
I mean, I'll take the 7 again, but
Let's do the 7 again. Let's
Yeah.
do the 7
Let's
again.
take the 7
I
again.
think I think this is very unlikely, to be honest. Like just because I look at like BlackRock maybe has a different roster, but I mean it's the ISU clause, isn't it? I did say it was just as likely
I think
as them
ISU
going 05.
yeah, you mentioned ISU could go 05. I think they're a contender maybe, and then like CCG could potentially
CCG.
they look pretty inconsistent, but I think they're good enough. They're probably good enough to beat like the teams below them, but
Yeah.
they did go 3-2. They lost to Lotus actually in that round 5 of GSL or of Swiss, I should say. So those are the two teams
Yeah.
I'm like eyeing. Everyone else, like I think is pretty.
Everyone else I think is safe as long as BlackRock runs back their roster. I think everyone else is too good to let that happen. And I think especially like their floor is too good because all these teams have players that at this point have been, talked about on the show at one point or another in a very positive light. So,
Yep. Every one of those teams except for Winthrop that we did not leave out went 5-0 or 4-1
Yep.
in Swiss, and so they're very good at that.
and
They'll be able to survive.
if Winthrop went 2-3, that would be pretty wild.
I deserve my money if that happens. Yeah. So
You would.
a successful Salt Street Bets, I should say. I had a lot of fun.
Well,
I think,
it'll be a success if I actually beat you this time.
I will say I'm not super confident about my initial investment, so I think there's a world where you actually beat me on that. I think the AOE one was a very good one, for you specifically.
For what it's worth, I don't feel confident. I mean, the NACL is so hard to predict this year. One, because it feels like the teams are all close to each other, and two, because everyone's played a different amount of games. So it's really, really difficult to actually anticipate who's going to be at the top or the bottom of the standings at this point. And qualifiers as well. Grapes, I mean, this is the most parity we've had in the qualifiers in quite a good amount of time, and it's been very, very entertaining to watch.
I think we know the people that are going to make it to finals at least, but even then, they could change. Psycho and Mixture could go crazy. Porsche could solo kill Yusin 7 times. Shogo could just become the greatest player that's ever touched tier 3 in his first split. I mean, I really don't know.
There's also this goblin in the back of my head that's saying something along the lines of but Morningstar's young, they're rookies, they could still choke, and you never know. I mean, that's just my point is you never really know. And I don't think they will, but it definitely could happen.
Yeah, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Salty Runback. Hope you enjoyed and get ready for another exciting week of games happening this weekend. We got another, I guess Super Week isn't the way to put it, but there are 3 series for each of the days because there's no LCS for this week, which means the only thing that you got to do this weekend is watch some NA Dev. You got NACL and the Qualifiers, which I guess you can't watch live. Well, you can, no. For Qualifier 2, that would have been that's a headline for next week where we could talk about the new streaming changes and stuff for the Qualifiers. But, things look a little bit different now.
Yeah, things will look a little bit different. But official petition to call the 3 series per day week a thick week for the NACL.
I like that.
We got the thick week coming up. It's not a super week, but it's a thick week. But regardless, definitely make sure lots of NA Dev action on the horizon. Qualifiers heating up. NACL continuing to heat up the intensity. And we've also got CLOL on the horizon as well. Tomorrow, when this episode airs, on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, we will be watching the St. Clair Saints take on McMaster. I have no idea what their mascot is. It's a bird.
They're from Canada. It doesn't count.
McMaster against St. Clair. You're not going to want to miss it whatsoever. We've also got Tier 3 tonight every week at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, where we cover all the qualifiers action in 90 minutes complete with content, interviews, all that fun stuff. And follow us on all of our social media. Make sure you're keeping up with all the leagues. And yeah, that's going to do it for us. If you think that Winthrop is going to go 2-3 in the next qualifier, you can take what we said with a grain of salt. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. Have a great night.
They're called the Marauders.